Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, bark like a dog for me.
Where's the goodies? Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Personally, I'm kind of old-fashioned. I like the setup, the joke. I like when the joke bombs, having fun with it bombing.
But it's a great business, and today TV is a great educational force. In this country, there isn't a child over 4 who can't draw a horse from memory. That's a good joke the way I tell it, huh?
So I all thought that came from Johnny Carson. And then when you really do your research, you find out, that's really Bob Hope.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. We are in week 2 of our Mayhem with the funny man himself, David Cohen. How are you, David?
Yes, very well, Douglas. Thank you.
That's good to hear. We're also here with our very own jester himself, Dan Newberger. Dan, welcome again to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, gentlemen. I'm doing great.
You having fun with this? Is it adding the level of pressure?
I am so looking forward to today's conversation because I know what's coming up in some of the folks that are in some of the brackets that we're going to be talking about today. And there's some great, great, funny acts that we're going to talk about.
Yes, and we're narrowing down 68 to 32, then to 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1. Of course, just like the brackets for, the NCAA basketball. Let's start off. We're going to start this week with Betty White against David Sedaris.
And now with a new feature, news from a woman's point of view, Sue Ann Nivens.
Thank you very much, Ted. And good evening. Massive mudslides wreak havoc. Late last evening, huge mudslides in south central Alaska buried the picturesque little village of Nornsk, long noted for its tapestries and woolly artifacts. Apple-cheeked housewives bustling down the cobbled streets were swept away by slithering mounds of mud. Let's all hope that survivors remembered that stubborn grime can be removed with a blend of and cornstarch. And now, back to Ted.
There you go. Betty White on Mary Tyler Moore, of course. And we've got a little something here from David Sedaris.
My favorite job right now is this couple who has a huge apartment on the Upper West Side. Nicest people in the world, very smart, and they don't have a clue. Like, I find unspeakable things in their apartment, like silverware that looks like it was crafted out of human hair. And last time I was there, the vacuum cleaner was clogged, so I put the hose to my mouth like a trumpet, and I realized too late that they had been vacuuming out the litter box, which was...
Why did you pretend it was a trumpet?
To clear it out.
To clear it out. All right.
But,
okay, there we go. David, let's start with you because you're much more familiar with David Sedaris, I think, than Dan and I. And what are your thoughts?
Well, David Sedaris more in the written form because he's an author, and sometimes that doesn't translate like that clip you just played necessarily. But I've always thought he was one of the funniest writers I've ever read, and continues to be that way. So that's why I added him to the list. But unfortunately, he had a it's almost like, North Carolina A&M having to play like Duke in the first round of the tournament. So I got to go with Betty White. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, Betty White is a juggernaut. I know the words were written for her, if you will, on most of what she did, but she was an amazing performer. She never missed. She had different characters. She went up right to like, what was she? I don't know, 95 at the end and funny all the way through, Saturday Night Live at the end and so forth. She was a piece of work. And if you remember back in the 70s, that character, Sue Ann, I forget Niven was an iconic character also. That was another one that was created by the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which we'll get to soon. But okay, so I'm going with Betty White for sure. And Dan, I think, where are you? I think you're on the same team.
Yeah, it's a clean sweep. I mean, I'm not really all that familiar with David Sedaris because I can't read, but Betty White to me is an iconic person. when I was much younger, watching the Mary Tyler Moore Show through the Golden Girls, and she actually just recently passed away. She was 99 years old. She's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, it's a clean sweep. Betty White for sure.
There you go. Okay, so that's that. Now, second round or second, what would you say? Second battle here is Julia Louis-Dreyfus against Bob Newhart. This is going to be a toughie. Here we go, Julia.
Who put you up to this? Was it her?
All right, wait a minute. I think you've got it backwards.
My George isn't clever enough to hatch a scheme like this.
You got that right.
What the hell does that mean?
That means whatever the hell you want it to mean.
You saying you want a piece of me?
I could drop you like a bag of dirt.
You want a piece of me? You got it!
A little something there and a little something from Bob Newhart, and we'll dive in.
I wondered if the night that King Kong climbed the outside of the Empire State Building was also the first night for a new guard. I think his first night would have gone something like this. Mr. Hennessy? Yes, sir, I hate to bother you at home like this, but yes, something's come up and it isn't covered in the guard's manual. I know how you like the new men to think on their feet, so I went to the broom closet without signing out a requisition. I will tomorrow, yes, sir. And I started banging him on the toes with it, but see, there are all these planes flying around his head, and they're shooting at him. Did I try hitting him in the face with it? Well, I was going to take the elevator up to his head, sir, but see, my jurisdiction only extends to his navel.
Okay, let's see who's starting this one. This is me starting this one. So I'm going to take a look at Bob Newhart and say that Bob Newhart from the TV show, when he did his TV shows, he was more of a straight man to me. I don't know that I really laughed all that much. I chuckled here and there, liked what he did, but I have to say Julia Louis-Dreyfus is clearly funnier from Saturday Night Live, VP, of course, Seinfeld, interviews, and so forth. I go with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Dan?
I would agree with you, but then both of us would be wrong. I have to say, there's not even a contest for me on this one because Bob Newhart, first of all, he's got great longevity. His two Bob Newhart shows, his appearances on The Big Bang Theory.
Great.
But I give Bob Newhart credit for something that I can't give credit to anybody else, which is the greatest moment, the funniest moment in television history. When he ended the second Bob Newhart show with a flashback to being in bed with Suzanne Plachette from his first Bob Newhart series, and that whole second show, which ran for several years, was like a dream sequence. I thought it was brilliant. It was funny. I think he's one of the funniest people that has ever lived for sure. I've got to go with Bob Newhart.
How about that? David Cohen.
Yeah, this is really, really tough. Really tough. I mean, they're so hard to compare. Oh gosh. I gotta say that Bob Newhart just by a hair.
Is there an explanation? We have a few minutes. What are your thoughts?
No, there's no explanation other than I think I have to give it to Bob Newhart because he's been around longer and he's been more successful at the things he's tried. He's had 3 very successful sitcoms. He had a stand-up career before that. He's just a funny person. Anytime he's on the screen, I laugh. I just laugh. And the same can be said of Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Anytime she's on, and Seinfeld and Veep and whatever that other short-lived sitcom she had. So she's always busy and really funny. I got to give it to Bob Newhart because I think he had a little more longevity, and I don't know, seemed to be a little more possibly influential. Although it's too soon to say how Julia is going to be influential, but that's why.
All right, sounds good. We are here on Everything Old is New Again, diving into, as David likes to say, the Maze Mayhem. Who is the funniest person of all time? When we get back, David Letterman against Dan Aykroyd, Three Stooges against Dana Carvey. We'll be back right after this. Everything Old is New Again.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hi, this is Butch Patrick, and you're listening to Everything Old is New Again.
We are back. Thank you, Butch
No
Patrick.
one can get the name of our show straight, Doug. No one. No celebrity who's ever come on has said everything old is new again.
And it's not like the saying is made up by us, right? I mean, like,
right.
How do you not know? I don't get it.
Exactly. Everything's old. Everything that's old is.
But we are here, and we are really having a fun time with Dan Newberg, and we're trying to figure out, AKA the NCAA type of brackets, who is the funniest person of all time. Right now we're up, we've got a game here, if you will, against, of David Letterman, Dan Aykroyd. This is going to be some battle, and we're going to start with Dan. After we hear these two clips, going to explain to us who he's voting for, and we'll go from there. David Letterman.
You're listening to
That's
Everything.
Not it. Hello.
That doesn't sound like him.
No, that wasn't David Letterman. Here we go.
My father said, my manager said, they all said that I had a right. I could have gotten a lawyer and I could have sued you for what you did, and I didn't. And all I want is an apology. Even you asked me last time I was on your show if I was going to have a lawsuit, and I could have sued you. I could have sued you for everything you're worth. Well, and I didn't, because I'm not that kind of a guy.
Yeah. You know what?
What kind of a guy are you?
We're going to pause here for station identification and get the hoses out here. I think you can use some of those words on TV. I'm not.
And I'll explain that in a minute. Here we go, Dan Aykroyd.
Yes, fish eaters, the days of troublesome scaling, cutting, and gutting are over. Because Super Bassomatic 76 is the tool that lets you use the whole bass with no fish waste without scaling, cutting, or gutting. Here's how it works. Catch a bass, remove the hook, and drop the bass. That's the whole bass into the Super Bassomatic 76.
Now I've done it. I've cut the dickens out of my finger. Well, I'm glad in a way this happened. You know, actually, I'm still time to time in the kitchen. We've never really discussed what to do. First, you must stop the bleeding.
I'm station manager Dan Aykroyd. During the past few weeks in Los Angeles, actor Lee Marvin and his former live-in companion Michelle Triola Marvin have been in court to settle her claim that he owes her half his income from the 6 years they lived together. That is the subject of tonight's point-counterpoint.
Who cruise and swing so successfully in tight slacks?
We are two wild and crazy guys.
The company sent me, Fred Garvin, male prostitute.
There we go. All right. So, Dan, first, the David Letterman clip. To me, I'm just going to put my 2 cents, and I threw that in there because that's kind of an iconic time on his show, and the quick wit at the end was impressive to me. But Dan, where are you on David Letterman versus Dan Aykroyd?
Yeah, so this is a really difficult one for me to decide on because I love both of these guys. I mean, Letterman did. I would stay up late just to watch David Letterman for so many years. You know, him putting one of those Alka-Seltzer tabs on himself and then catapulting himself into a vat of water. There were just things that would make you shake your head and go, oh, my God, like, what is this guy thinking? Dan Aykroyd had so many great characters that he portrayed, and they were so funny. I remember that episode, the clip that you just played of the Bassomatic when it was first on TV in the early 70s. I could go either way on this one. Initially, I was thinking, I got to go with David Letterman. How could I not go with David Letterman? But I think I'm actually leaning, after listening to the clips, I think maybe I'll go with Dan Aykroyd.
Okay, that's valid. David Cohen, where are you going to go on this one?
To me, it's no contest. It's Letterman by a long shot. I mean, Aykroyd was funny in the 70s. That's it.
Yeah, I think
Letterman's been so influential as a host and so groundbreaking that, you know, his influence lives on today. And he's just a king of comedy as far as I'm concerned. I watched the show when it was on weekday mornings at 10 a.m. when he first started out. I was in college. I used to start watching him, and he was always just someone I always respected. So, yeah, Letterman for me.
And something Letterman had to do that Aykroyd didn't do through his career. Letterman, what was he on, 25 years, something like that, plus, right?
Right.
Had to try to be new and fresh. I know he had writers, but new and fresh for 4 nights, if not, I think it's 5 nights a week that he was on.
Right.
So that's not easy to do for sure. And Aykroyd, if Dan Aykroyd was on Saturday Night Live now, in other words, if we were in the 70s doing this, I'd say Aykroyd for sure, without hesitation, for all the reasons Dan mentioned. But there is that problem of, okay, after Saturday Night Live, kind of bomb after bomb, and then Ghostbusters is kind of funny, but and then bomb after bomb. So you sort of have a little bit, and then Blues Brothers, which is musical, which is great. I mean, he's done so many things, but do you take a look at that one period of time, let's call it 10 years even, I think that's being generous, that he was really, really funny, and then the rest just ignore, or what? So I'm going to have to go with Letterman for that reason, if that makes sense.
I'm good with that, actually. I feel good that I voted for Dan Aykroyd, just that one of them got, he got one vote. But I'm actually happy that you guys both went for Letterman. I'm good with that.
All right. You'll be able to sleep tonight. That'll be good.
I will. Although that's never a problem.
All right. So next we have the play-in. We're not going to play anything. We know the Stooges. The play-in B, which, they played into the NCAA Final 64, if you will. The Three Stooges.
Oh, so this is another play-in group we're doing?
No, we're carrying forward now the Stooges, who were a play-in, but we've already played them already, their clip. So we got Dana Carvey against the Stooges. Let's see what happens here.
I do Paul McCartney on Mars. We didn't know it'd be so red. Christopher Walken trying to open a jar of peanut butter. No! I do John Lovitz as a third grader. Why do we have to use the number 2 pencil? For those of you at home who don't know, you're watching a thing called a television.
Well, isn't that special?
All right, so let's see who's first on this one. Who was just first? That was Dan, right? So David Cohen.
I went first last time.
Yeah, David Cohen, you start first. What do you think? Stooges or Dana Carvey?
Yeah, I got to go with Dana Carvey here, just because as much as I like the Stooges, Dana Carvey was just... He still is very funny, and not just on Saturday Night Live and all the sketches he did, but everything after that, the very short-lived show he did, that comedy show that they actually did a documentary on recently, which is really fun to watch. And to this day, I mean, he was just a host or a guest on the podcast Smartless. And, he just came on and entertained for an hour and did all the voices and people we didn't know, old actors he had met. And he's just a genuinely funny guy. So Dana Carvey.
And I know this is ancillary, but he's like Martin Short. When he does those shows, whatever show he does, he brings material. Like, he doesn't just sit there and say, ask me a question.
Exactly.
Like, he entertains, and Martin Short does the same. They actually prepare something. Which I know that sounds silly, but it's very impressive because it's always new, creative, fun material. He does a lot of imitations. He's on that bend, but he does more than just imitations. He does characters.
Yeah.
He's fast. He's funny. Stooges, I love, but, after a while, it does get played out. I'm not played out with Dana Carvey, 20, 30 years later, right? So I'm going with Dana Carvey, too. Dan?
Well, I'm still mad at you guys for having the Three Stooges beat Eugene Levy, so I'm not going to vote for the Three Stooges. And on top of that, Dana Carvey not only is a brilliant comedian, but I had a really funny story about Dana Carvey. Many years ago, when I was working at a different, very large company, we had Dana Carvey as the entertainment that night. In front of 2,000 people, he made me get up on stage and dance the church lady dance with him. So
wow.
I had the opportunity. Yeah, I had the opportunity to talk to him a little bit backstage. The guy was just a charming, really nice, but incredibly funny guy. So for multiple reasons, I'm going to go with Dana Carvey.
All right, there it is. Let's try to get a little bit of head start here. We've got the next round is Gary Shandling and Mary Tyler Moore. Let's at least hear a little something from Gary Shandling. This is going to be tough.
Would you mind not doing it on the show anymore? Because, frankly, I'll tell you the truth.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that when you do your you do this, that isn't the same affectation? That isn't the same as my hey now?
I just prefer you not do it on the show anymore, okay? I just, it gets on my nerves. It gets on the audience's nerves as well.
Sir. No,
yes,
sir.
It does.
No.
Hank?
Look, you're not out there. And believe me, it's very big with the audience. And I'm going to tell you something else. I think it helps make the show work. It's part of our whole interplay on camera.
By interplay, you mean the times we're both awake?
Hey now.
It's just unbelievable. I wish we had time. We're going to have time. Next section. That's just a little bit of Gary Shandling. He's up against Mary Tyler Moore. We'll continue that after the break here on Everything Old is New Again. Mayhem, trying to find out who is the funniest person of all time.
Hi, this is screenwriter and author Carl Gottlieb, enjoying being on the air with Douglas Viviani and David S. Cohen on Everything Old is New Again.
David S. Cohen. Who's that? I love that. Carl Gottlieb, of course, helped screenwrite The Jerk and, of course, Jaws. So he's got a little relation to comedy as well, which is what we're doing. We are in the middle of Mayhem. May's Mayhem? I don't know. Mayhem.
Mayhem.
All right. Mayhem. How
about just
search.
Mayhem?
The search for the funniest person on the planet. Now, we just heard a little something from Gary Shandling. Let's hear from Mary Tyler Moore. Legit difficult choice. Gary Shandling, Mary Tyler Moore. Who's funnier?
There was always some deeper meaning to whatever Chuckles did. Do you remember Mr. Fee-Fi-Fo's little catchphrase? You remember how, when his arch rival, Senor Kaboom, hit him with a giant cucumber and knocked him down, Mr. Fee-Fi-Fo would always pick himself up, dust himself off, and say, I hurt my foo-foo. What did Chuckles ask in return? Not much. In his own words, a little song, a little seltzer, Doctor. Excuse me, young lady. Yes, you. Would you stand up, please? You feel like laughing, don't you? Don't try to hold it back. Go ahead, laugh out loud. Don't you see, nothing would have made Chuckles happier. He lived to make people laugh. Tears were offensive to him, deeply offensive. He hated to see people cry. So go ahead, my dear. Laugh for Chuckles.
There we go. A little bit long, but I wanted to show, and I'll go first here on this. I wanted to show that Mary Tyler Moore, when she started out with Dick Van Dyke, the word was that, they knew her as a dancer, and she could be comedic, but she was hired as an actress at the time, right? And she learned from Carl Reiner and Dick Van Dyke how to let her inner self out, and because she is a funny person. And then with that clip, I just wanted to show that she didn't even say a word. She didn't have one line. And I know there's another character, carrying the vocal part of that scene. But if you're watching that scene, if you ever saw that show, that episode, it's hysterical because of her reactions, being sad, being happy, and I should say laughing and so forth, and trying to hide it, and then crying at the end. I just thought that it came full circle where it shows that she can be comedic words, but also just with just her expressions. So for that reason, and her longevity on both of those shows, and how she put a smile on my face all the time, even though I had to hesitate because Gary Shandling was hysterical, and especially the Gary Shandling show, two of them, the one before the one we heard, was great as well. His stand-up was always so funny. He was always so creative. So this is really, really hard, but I got to go with Mary Tyler Moore. Dan?
I was in love with Mary Tyler Moore for a number of years. She didn't know it. It was not reciprocated, I'm sure. But this is another interesting one. So Mary Tyler Moore to me was a very specific period of time, and beyond that, it was kind of like you didn't really hear anything about Mary Tyler Moore. Both of them are more of like the straight player. They're not like the slapsticks, make you laugh out loud type of thing. I'm gonna put this one on David, and I'm gonna say Gary Shandling.
Yeah,
just my 2 cents. I'm sorry, David. Just my 2 cents. But you say a small period of time, or a short period, or a specific period of time. It was she hit the 60s and 70s. Like basically, she was top of a game for 20 years at least. But David,
yeah, I mean, fair comment. But after she was off TV, you didn't really, hear anything from her for the last 50 years. And by the way, it may not be all that different for Gary Shandling either, but I don't want to choose on this one, so I'm going to have David Cohen be the one responsible.
David Cohen, you have the ball.
Yeah, well, Mary Tyler Moore. I in this contest, I do not hold against anyone that they weren't funny for a very long period of time. It's just how much they made me laugh. But in the back of your mind, like, how can you not consider that in a way, So, but Mary Tyler Moore, yeah, Dan, like you said, I mean, I was in love with her. I think every kid our age was probably in love with her at some point. And I think she knew it. And she's just an icon for me. But Gary Shandling, I mean, what he did is a stand-up, incredible stand-up. Remember the girlfriend who all she talked about was herself? They were at a barbecue and she was too close to the grill and her blouse caught on fire or her hair caught on fire. And it's still all about her, I'm on fire, put me out. So from the stand-up to the Gary Shandling show, which broke the fourth wall and was great. And then Larry Sanders, the clip that you played, and the fact that among comedians, stand-ups, he was like a godfather. Everyone hung out with Gary Shandling. Even if you were an 18-year-old newbie living out in L.A., you went to Gary's house, right? That's where all the comedians congregated. So very long-winded way of saying Gary Shandling. That's
all right.
Tiebreaker.
I will go with that, but I will call that an upset in many ways. I don't know.
It was difficult, no question.
But I'll go with it.
That one for sure could have gone multiple ways. Yep. By the way, I don't know if you gentlemen want to bring this up now or not, but we have been getting some listener feedback on some of these brackets.
Yes, if you have any that's relevant to the particular person as we do the show, certainly mention it, of course.
Okay, all right. I'm happy to do that. Okay.
All right. Is there something relevant here, or are you just mentioning that?
No, absolutely not. It's completely irrelevant to this one.
All right. Next, we've got...
It fits with our theme, Doug. If it's not relevant, let's bring it up.
Exactly. Bill Cosby, Joan Rivers.
And because of my father, between the ages 7 through 15, I thought my name was Jesus Christ. The Jesus Christ! And my brother Russell thought his name was Damn It. Damn it, will you stop all that noise? And Jesus Christ, sit down. So one day I'm out playing in the rain. My father said, damn it, will you get in here? I said, Dad, I'm Jesus Christ.
All right, and Joan Rivers.
She's a living testament.
Living testament to that what? Chrissy Brinkley's a living testament that
peroxide causes brain damage. She's not that bright of a soldier. St. Patrick's Day, everyone was wearing green. She thought Gumby had exploded. She's not the brightest, but it doesn't matter.
Not bright, no. Because the figure's there.
The figure's there and the look is there.
Okay, who starts this one? This is Dan starting this one. This is difficult. They're all difficult. I guess we could stop saying that, right? Dan, where are you?
These two people are really funny. You can't say, in my mind, I can't say that one is necessarily funnier than the other, but I will tell you that there was a lot of chatter from listeners on this particular pairing. As an example, Marty K. from New Jersey says, Joan Rivers was groundbreaking as a female in a male-dominated industry, and I can't vote for Cosby because he's a creep. And I think that unfortunately, a lot of listeners had that similar sentiment about Bill Cosby, who I think is a brilliant comedian, but maybe not such a great person, obviously. So I'm gonna echo Marty's sentiments, and I'm gonna go with Joan Rivers.
All right, David Cohen.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, I have to put the personal traits aside and just look at from pure who made me laugh. And I really, I don't like saying this, but wow, Bill Cosby was so freaking funny in a way that I think was funnier than Joan Rivers, as funny as she was. So I got to say, just eliminating everything else other than the funny, Bill Cosby.
Listen, if Bill Cosby received any kind of accolade for real, or any kind of award or a trophy for this show and for winning this contest, I would have a problem voting for him for sure. But I have to put his social life in a drawer, because we're just considering who's the funniest person. We're not saying who's the best person, if that makes sense, right? But I hate to have to do it. I agree with you. But even from his first show in the 1970s, when he was Kincaid, the gym teacher, he was hysterical. His stand-up I saw in New York City many times, where he actually wasn't standing up, he was sitting in a chair and just telling stories, to his appearances on, of course, his own show and Carson and so forth. I have to go with Bill Cosby. He's clearly, in my world, one of the funniest that there's been around. So
yeah, I think had he not had his personal issues, for sure he would be a very strong contender to win this whole thing.
Exactly.
But to be able to look at my wife and my daughter in the face, after we are done taping this show, I understand what you guys are saying. I'm okay with it. Obviously, I get it. I understand why you guys voted for him. I do think he's hilarious, but
I agree with you. I think we're all going to look for a reason next round to knock him out. That's for sure, right? I mean, we just don't want to do it, but we've got to give him some credit where credit's due, just for the career. Period.
Well, I think the next bracket that he's going to be up against is two heavyweights, so that will be interesting.
All right, we'll be back on Everything Old is New Again to continue with Mayhem to find out who's the funniest person around.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hi, this is Don Most. You probably remember me as Ralph from Happy Days, and you're listening to Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
There we go. Happy Days had some laughs in it here and there, so we're going along with that theme, if you will, on Mayhem here on Everything Old is New Again, trying to find out who is the funniest person of all time, if you will. We're going to have another bracket here that I'm not going to play any clips from. Maybe I'll play them down the line, but we know Rodney Dangerfield and Richard Pryor's clips are all going to have words in it that I can't play on the radio a lot of the time anyway. So who goes first here? This is going to be back to Dan, it looks like. Dan, who do you vote for with respect to Rodney Dangerfield or Richard Pryor? And that is, really... Yeah.
This is a heavyweight bout for sure. Yeah. And this one actually got more listener feedback, I think, than any other grouping in the brackets. So Jim N from New York said Rodney is the funniest human being I ever saw. Rob G from Philadelphia said Richard Pryor is a great stand-up, great comedic actor, and groundbreaking. Eric F. from Chicago said that Rodney Dangerfield is classic, hilarious, and stands the test of time. He didn't need a script. He mastered the art of self-deprecation, and he actually gave a whole longer thing, which I won't go into, but he said that Dangerfield later quipped he was so little known when he gave up show business that at the time he quit, he was the only one who knew that he quit. Dangerfield had so many great quotes. So I love both of these guys. Richard Pryor was in a lot of really funny movies, as was Rodney Dangerfield. When I listen to the stand-up acts of these two performers, I have to give the edge to Rodney Dangerfield, but this was really close in my mind.
David Cohen.
This is a tough one too, but I'm going to go with Richard Pryor.
And
I just think as funny as Dangerfield was and had a great one-liners, and I loved him in, Caddyshack, the iconic film where he made sort of his big comeback. I think pound for pound, Richard Pryor was more daring and more funny and more influential. So going with him,
especially with regard to his stand-up, not so much with his later movies, of course, like Superman 4 and some others that weren't so great. But Richard Pryor, for no other reason as the groundbreaking comedy that he presented in the 70s, he was iconic and was the stand-up comedian of his day. Don't know if it translated to the movies all the time, but he did have a few that were really good, Silver Streak and some others. So it's really close, but by a hair, I go Richard Pryor myself.
Wow.
So there we go.
That's shocking. I actually would have had Rodney Dangerfield in my final four.
How about that?
Wow.
Okay. Well, let's go to Gene Shepard. These are just some others talking about Gene Shepard, because Gene Shepard's comedy would take more than a 30-second clip.
And he had a column in the magazines, and his columns had this personal perspective that I had never really heard anyone else do.
The idea of someone just telling stories and talking about what was in his heart was unheard of to me. I'd never heard any form of art like that.
So that's the kind of comedy that I love. I don't know if it was in me and he brought it out, or I got it from him, or whatever it is.
He was saying that the world is bigger than you think, and this is stuff you probably didn't think about before. This is stuff you probably didn't realize.
But it excited me, it propelled me creatively to want to talk about the smallest things in life, because they are windows into the biggest feelings of life.
And Gene Shepard looked out to that crowd and said, never make fun of anything unless you love it. Never make fun of anybody unless you love them. Boy, is that important. Maybe the most important thing I ever heard.
All right. I have the clip here.
Who are those people talking, by the way?
That was Seinfeld, Penn and Teller, and Harry Shearer. Okay, Kate McKinnon.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I put the junk in junket, baby. I also put the ET in junket.
Oh, so you put
because I want a phone home. That's a person who's passionate, and I like passionate people.
You
so
do.
I
That is the core of sort of everyone you play is a passion, an unassailable passion.
He's been thinking about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
The hurricane was so bad. I was asking the crew, like, is this normal? And they were saying, no, I've never seen anything like this. I was becoming airborne in my bed. And I was saying to my new Australian friends, what are we, guys, we're going to die. And they were like, all right, let's go to the casino then.
All right, so this one, David Cohen, you will start.
Where are you getting these clips, man? I mean, come on. Kate McKinnon's funny. Okay, Kate McKinnon.
That's it?
There it is.
That's the vote.
What? I had a vote, right?
All right, you could explain it, but that's okay. All right, so
who was she up against?
Gene Shepard.
I like him, and I respect all the people who had nice things to say about him. And I admit, beyond The Christmas Story, I don't know a lot about him. But with that said, I mean, as far as just like funny, Kate McKinnon's hard to beat. So yeah,
I think it's hands down that if you don't know Gene Shepard, of course, you're not going to be able to vote for him. And I appreciate that. But from his articles in Playboy, from his radio show for 10 years as a raconteur. Yeah.
You read Playboy?
From his books,
just for the Gene Shepard stories.
Exactly.
That's the reason I got Playboy.
He just skipped right over that. Like, wait a minute.
What else was in Playboy? Was there something?
I'm just talking about Gene Shepard and what he did, and then his books and his presentation live in the 70s and in the 60s. He was iconic. He was creative. He did a radio show every night, different stories, different comments about social commentary, and was as creative can be. So without hesitation, Gene Shepard for me. And Dan, where are you on this?
Wow. So I guess maybe I'm not as familiar with Gene Shepard's work, but it sounds like other people are actually delivering his comedic thoughts. I'm going to have to go with, I'm going to agree with one of your listeners, Jenny H. from New York, who said that Kate McKinnon is able to make anything funny. I agree with that, so I'm going to go with Kate McKinnon.
Okay, fair enough. There's where we are. We have one more to go before the end of the show. We continue next week to find Mayhem.
Are you okay, Doug? Did we hurt your feelings?
No, I appreciate that. Listen, if you never heard him, you're not going to say he's funny. It's very simple. If you don't know who the person is, how could you possibly vote for him?
But The Christmas Story wasn't enough, wasn't?
No, that's not representative of his work. No, not at all.
He's pissed off, man. Doug is pissed.
No, it's not. It's not representative of his work. Lenny Bruce versus Harold Ramis. I'm sorry. I don't have the time. I will definitely go into it if you like, but let me just finish this up.
No.
A reputation for being sort of controversial and irreverent, and also the semantic bear trap of bad taste. But you might be interested in how I became offensive. Like started in school with drinking, and I was like a real depressed kid, 7, 8 years old. I really get juiced and get out of bed. And so the teacher would really get bugged, with me singing and carrying on and calling Columbus a fink and and boosting Aaron Burr and all that.
All right, Harold Ramis.
I have hidden somewhere deep inside me is an alter ego that's a lot like Bill's or Dan's or John Belushi. I mean, I admire those guys for the incredible courage it takes to be as crazy as they are. I wish I was more like that. And I think the way I express it is in the things that I write, for them or with them.
All right, so I go first on this one. Lenny Bruce, groundbreaking. If you listen to what he speaks of and talks about, it's very cultural. It's very, he is funny, but I don't know that I laugh out loud with his work at all. It might be because of the time frame that we are in now versus when he was then. I don't know. Harold Ramis is not. He was on SCTV and was funny for sure as a performer, but he's funnier behind the scenes as a writer. And he wrote all of. If you take a look at his credits, you'll see he wrote all of the movies that you love in terms of comedies. So for me, it's clear Harold Ramis. Dan, where are you on this?
I can understand why you would go with Harold Ramis. I'm torn on this one because Lenny Bruce was groundbreaking in that he was the first comedian that I remember that whose comedy was based on social commentary. And he was a larger than life figure. But who's funnier? I probably would say Harold Ramis.
Okay, David Cohen.
Yeah, I agree with all of what you both said. So,
there we go.
Reason, Harold Ramis.
Oh, we end this show on a unanimous turn there. If you want to participate, go to our website, EverythingOldIsNewAgain.biz. That's EverythingOldIsNewAgain.biz, or go and send us an email anytime you like at oldnewagain@AOL.com. We found for today's bracket, we've got Betty White moving on, Bob Newhart moving on, David Letterman, Dana Carvey, Gary Shandling, Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, Kate McKinnon, and Harold Ramis. We'll be back next week to continue Mayhem on Everything Old Is New Again. We're going to find out who is the funniest person of all time.